Hello, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. The judge just declared that you must unseal all your third-party communication. Could that be why Hugh Jackman is apparently ghosting Ryan Reynolds? Sorry, Blake and Ryan. Nope. You don't get special celebrity privileges. Nope. You must unseal all this stuff, the third-party communications, etc., which could mean Taylor Swift, Ryan Reynolds, all that stuff. It's all gonna come, and it's all coming Tuesday. It's subtle at first, a missed text here, a cold shoulder there, but those close to them can feel the tension. Hugh's been unusually quiet around Ryan lately. People are whispering he's stepping back for his own sanity.
Ryan Reynolds is freaking out in real time, and the reason is simple. The protections finally vanished. A judge stepped in and stripped away the celebrity cushioning, ordering the full unsealing of third-party communications. That single move dragged private texts, emails, and messages into the open, not just between the main players, but across agents, studios, and outside figures. Once secrecy disappeared, control followed it, exposing behavior that could no longer be managed, spun, or quietly buried from public view.
Third-party privacy interests, unseal. Look at all these third-party private, unseal. Unsealing all the third-party privacy. Taylor's text, Ryan's text, all of that could fall into these issues. And this is all gonna be in those motions for summary judgment.
The deadline was not vague or flexible either. Everything had to be refiled by Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, with public oral arguments scheduled for Thursday. That timeline matters because it meant there was no room to spin, stall, or massage the story before it hit daylight.
Because look, oral arguments in the Wayfarer Party's motion for summary judgment and Lively's motion for spoliation sanctions is scheduled for next Thursday, January 22nd.
The immediate impact was brutal and honestly kind of funny if you are watching from the outside. Ryan Reynolds lost narrative control for the first time in years. This is a guy who normally runs the joke before the joke runs at him, who pre-packages his own image with witty tweets and self-aware humor. That stopped working the second a judge made it clear that private behavior was about to be read out loud in public. When texts and emails are unsealed, sarcasm does not save you, charm does not save you, and marketing definitely does not save you.
Public has a right to attend that argument and to follow along based on the unredacted summary judgment and spoliation materials. That is, the extent continued sealing of materials cannot be justified. Ba-bing, ba-bing, ba-bing.
Within 48 hours, the industry reaction shifted. This part is key. People did not rush to defend him. They did not flood social media with loyalty posts. Instead, they went quiet or stepped back. Quiet tolerance turned into visible distancing almost overnight. That is how Hollywood really votes. Not with statements, but with silence. Once the order landed, you could almost feel the phone stop ringing. That is what a real meltdown looks like. Not screaming in public, but losing the invisible shield that keeps consequences away.
The fact that she's been trying to do this is so shady, that she thinks she's above everything. Oh, this person shouldn't be involved. Girl, you started all this. You knew what was gonna happen.
Then comes the part that really rattled him. Hugh Jackman went silent. No calls returned, no texts answered, no joint appearances, no playful banter to calm the fans. Hugh simply stepped out of frame. This was not subtle if you were paying attention. A planned public outing at Sutton Foster's Cabaret happened without Ryan anywhere near it. Hugh showed up solo. That one image did more damage than 1,000 gossip posts.
But, darlings, grab your popcorn. Hollywood's ultimate bromance might be hitting a speed bump. Sources tell Rob, that Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, kings of red carpet selfies and snappy banner, are showing cracks behind those perfectly polished smiles. An insider whispered.
Insiders started saying the obvious part out loud. Ryan was the one reaching out. Ryan was calling, texting, trying to set plans, trying to keep the routine alive. Hugh was disengaging. And no, this was not about being busy. The reason cited was legal exposure, possible deposition, ongoing litigation. Hugh did not want to be anywhere near a situation where his name, messages, or offhand comments could be dragged into a courtroom transcript.
He's texting, calling, even trying to set plans, but Hugh just hasn't been returning his calls. Case in point, the duo were set to catch Sutton Foster's Cabaret together. That's his new partner. But Hugh went solo, leaving Ryan and the gang hanging. At the root of the drama, apparently it ties back to Ryan and Blake's ongoing legal battle with Justin Baldoni.
This matters because Hugh Jackman was not just a friend, he was the safest friend. The brand-friendly bromance that studios love to sell. Years of jokes, interviews, and mutual hype turned into marketing gold, and now that exact relationship became a liability. Hugh choosing distance was not emotional, it was strategic. He read the room, he saw what unsealed evidence does to people. He decided not to be next. When the first major ally disengages, others take notes. Hollywood noticed. People always do. This was the first visible crack in the wall, and it did not come from critics or lawyers. It came from someone who knew exactly when to walk away.
We got to be on top of how the judge is asking these questions. What's he saying? What's the verdict going to be in this? And then there's talks of a settlement talk happening that same day, later that afternoon. So I'm going to be there. I'm flying out. I'm doing it. I bought the ticket. I will be there. So I will be there. Quarter Rand Opinion. Lauren's going to be there as well. So you're going to want to watch us live on Thursday as a report from the courtroom in the freezing Manhattan cold.
Now layer Marvel on top of this, because that is where the pressure multiplies. Marvel Studios started reassessing internal exposure tied to Deadpool and Wolverine. And that phrase reassessing is doing a lot of work. It means meetings. It means legal teams. It means risk charts. What was supposed to be a celebratory return suddenly looked like a liability review. Hugh Jackman was no longer being talked about in terms of promotion or press tours. He was being talked about in terms of possible deposition. That is a wild shift. One minute you are the beloved Wolverine, the next you are a name on a list of people lawyers want to question. Ryan Reynolds, meanwhile, was reportedly sidelined from future creative input discussions. Think about that. The guy who built his brand on control and cleverness is suddenly not steering the ship.
But they are buttoning up their whole case. They're being so much more professional now to ensure that it's all released the proper way in court. And so Tuesday, get excited. I think we're going to get some damning stuff on Tuesday against Blake Lively.
Project delays did not help. The SAG strike overlap already paused momentum, and legal uncertainty made everything heavier. Studios hate uncertainty. They hate surprises even more. When a project carries unresolved legal noise, it stops being fun and starts being dangerous. What was meant to be a victory lap for the MCU turned into containment mode. Not expansion, not celebration, just damage control meetings and careful language. This is where the roast writes itself. Ryan wanted to be the center of everything, the joke, the heart, the voice. Instead, the spotlight turned clinical. Lawyers replaced marketers, silence replaced banter, and the meltdown was not loud. It was procedural, scheduled, time-stamped, and happening in real time.
And she spent so much money, wasted so much time, harassed so many people to try to get to the point, and now it's all gonna come out. And I want to stress, look at this. Thursday, January 22nd, that's this Thursday, this week, the public has a right to attend that argument and to follow along based on the unredacted summary judgment and spoilation materials. Damn right!
Here's where the whole thing stops being funny and starts being embarrassing. Once the text came out, it became painfully clear that Ryan was not just involved. He was directing traffic like a control tower with a caffeine problem. The newly unsealed communications show aggressive message drafting for other people. Not suggestions, not edits, but full-on scripts. He was not saying this is my opinion. He was saying here is what you will say and when you will say it.
I'm on a shoot right now. Want me to call you after? Sure. Zero pressure. We can chat tomorrow. And sigh. Ugh, I'm sorry, Ryan. Working on his set was truly one of the worst days of my life, but it's survivable and I'll help. Call me anytime tomorrow. Even she's not like making it sound that bad. That they just don't like him. I think that's really the vibe I get from a lot of it.
He tried to script statements for agents, Sony executives, cast members, and even media outlets, which is wild because that is 4 different groups with 4 different interests. Yet somehow he thought they should all sound like the same angry diary entry. He demanded full-throated apologies on strict timelines, like this was a hostage negotiation instead of a film dispute. Tuesday by this hour, today before the press, now or else. The obsession with timing is almost impressive if it was not so unhinged. What starts as persuasion quickly turns into pressure and then slides straight into coercion. You can see it escalate line by line. First he asks nicely, then he insists, then he rewrites, then he threatens consequences. This is not leadership, this is panic dressed up as confidence. Multiple meetings stretched to 5 hours at a time, which is insane for adults who claim to be professionals. Raised voices were reported, intimidation was claimed. People left those rooms stunned, not convinced.
He is struggling. And we're learning this from the stuff we have seen unsealed of just how mean Ryan is behind the scenes to get his way. I'm disgusted by it. I gotta be honest. It is shameful This dude needs like a mean rehab or something to like really get in touch. Like, you're out of touch, bro.
And here's the funniest part. This is the same guy who built a brand on being the chill, funny one. The nice guy, the wink at the camera. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, he is running marathon meetings, rewriting everyone's homework, and demanding emotional performances on command. That is not a charm. That is control issues with a press pass. These texts did not just change the narrative, they exposed the obsession. This is where power abuse stops being whispered and starts being documented. Once the seal was lifted, WME, Sony Pictures, and multiple producers stopped playing along. They pushed back explicitly, not quietly. Internal records show clear disagreement with Ryan's narrative and his tactics. And that matters because it proves the silence before was not agreement, it was containment.
You've protected my wife from so much and so often, and I'm protecting her. And in protecting her, you've also preserved the film and its ability to not only work commercially, but achieve a second and possibly better objective, giving voice to a vital issue affecting so many people. No matter what, you have a lifelong supply of admiration, respect, and friendship from me. If there's any way I can pay it forward anytime, say the word and I'll show up for you. Try me.
Sony executives later confirmed surprise and real discomfort during key meetings. Not mild confusion, not creative differences, actual discomfort. That word keeps coming up for a reason. People were not prepared for the tone, the length, or the intensity. Third-party witnesses contradicted the claim that everyone was on board. In fact, several accounts directly challenged the idea of universal support. That myth evaporated the moment the paperwork went public. For months, these objections were sealed, hidden behind black bars and legal language. Once unsealed, they exploded publicly because context finally existed. You could see the pattern instead of isolated moments. You could track how often people pushed back, how often they resisted being told what to say, and how often they were ignored anyway. Ryan's whole strategy relied on the assumption that no one would ever see this side of the process. He banked on power fatigue, on people choosing convenience over confrontation. That works until a judge removes the cover. Hollywood is very good at pretending not to notice things. It is terrible at pretending once documents are public.
He says here, look, he says, all parties who submitted the materials shall refile them in accordance with this order by Wednesday, the 21st of this week, that's in 2 days, by 1 p.m. Eastern. So that's 1 p.m. boom. You can imagine.
What makes this brutal is that the pushback did not come from outsiders. It came from his own ecosystem, his agency, the studio, the producers, the people who normally protect stars from themselves. When those groups stop nodding and start documenting, the game is over. This is not cancellation. This is accountability catching up at the speed of email. Hugh Jackmann choosing survival over loyalty is the quietest and smartest move in this entire saga. His divorce announcement in September 2023 is now being re-examined under a completely different light. At the time, it was framed as personal. Now it sits on a timeline that overlaps with lawsuit escalation, production pauses, and increasing rumor pressure. That timing is not subtle anymore.
Another insider chuckled, Ryan's jokes online are still sharp, but in private, he's visibly frustrated. Hugh's given him the cold shoulder. You can see this. This is why I believe this. In those interviews he does, you can see he is struggling. He is struggling.
September 2023 lands right in the middle of everything heating up. Legal stress rising, filming complications stacking, public speculation is growing louder. In that environment, Jackmann's PR strategy shifts. The duo branding fades. The joint jokes disappear. The focus turns inward and solo. Image protection becomes the priority, not shared damage control. What really stands out is that Jackmann reportedly refuses to participate in messaging coordination. No drafting, no group statements, no let us all say the same thing. That refusal is not accidental, it is a boundary. He understands what happens when you let someone else write your words during a legal storm. Silence becomes the safest option.
What happened in that courtroom? Because this one feels important to me. This one feels important to me where I feel like we got to be on top of how the judge is asking these questions. What's he saying? What's the verdict going to be in this? And then there's talks of a settlement talk happening that same day, later that afternoon.
And silence in this case is louder than anything he could have said. Every missed call, every skipped appearance, every unanswered text sends the same message without risking a transcript. He is not fighting. He is not defending. He is not explaining. He is stepping out of the blast radius. This is where loyalty gets tested, not in public declarations, but in private risk. Jackman chose survival, he chose distance, and that choice exposes just how radioactive the situation had become. When a decades-long friendship turns into a legal liability, the smart move is to walk away quietly. Ryan, meanwhile, is left doing what he does worst: talking too much, reaching too hard, trying to keep control of people who have already decided to protect themselves. Jackman's silence is not betrayal, it is self-preservation, and the fact that it hurts this much tells you everything about how dependent Ryan had become on that alliance.
You're out of touch, bro. Just because you got all this money and clout and attention doesn't mean you're, above the law in a way. My God, dude. Hugh's giving him the cold shoulder. First they lost Taylor Swift, now Hugh Jackman too. One friend sighed to me, Hollywood loves a bromance, but even the best friendships can crack under the pressure.
Every move since then reflects caution. No shared interviews, no playful exchanges, no joint damage control, just distance. That decision speaks to fear of subpoenas, transcripts, and timelines. It also signals trust collapse. When survival instincts kick in, friendships become optional, and legal math takes over completely. Nothing about that is accidental or friendly at this stage now. Once the unsealing order hit, something in Ryan Reynolds snapped in a very public way. You could see it across platforms almost immediately. His online behavior grew erratic, not chaotic in a funny way, but twitchy, reactive, and restless. This was not the confident silence of someone letting lawyers work. This was the digital pacing of someone who cannot stand not being in control of the conversation. Posts appeared faster, replies felt rushed, the timing was off, and when timing is off, humor dies first.
People magazine had the exclusive that Blake is hiring a, blah, 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 I can't say, a lawyer ahead of the trial. Actress has brought on Sigrid McCauley, known for representing Jeffrey's accusers, her legal fight with Heads Up towards trial.
Defensiveness became the baseline tone. Every response sounded like it was written to preempt criticism rather than address reality. Instead of letting facts sit, he tried to explain around them. Deflection followed right behind. If people questioned behavior, the response was never about substance. It was always about misunderstanding, bad faith, or people being unfair. Over-explanation became the tell. When someone who used to land a joke in one line starts writing paragraphs to justify vibes, you know the wheels are wobbling. The jokes stop working. That is the clearest signal of all. What used to read as self-aware now read like a press release wearing a grin. Punchlines felt like shields. Sarcasm felt forced. The audience could tell the difference. Humor only works when it is optional. Here, it felt necessary. Necessary humor is just damage control with better lighting. People stopped laughing and started asking why he was trying so hard.
So many messages from Ryan Reynolds have finally been unredacted, and they give us a peek inside the mind of a man who is way more involved than he wants to let on.
A pattern crystallized fast. Narcissistic framing took over. Every issue bent inward. Every problem became a story about how this affected him personally, how unfair it was to him, how much he had sacrificed. Then came victim reversal. Pushback was reframed as persecution. Criticism was reframed as cruelty. Accountability was reframed as harassment. Anyone who did not immediately align was cast as hostile or disloyal. And threaded through everything was an obsession with loyalty enforcement. Who is with me? Who stayed quiet? Who failed to defend me loudly enough? Who owes me support because of past favors? This is not confidence. This is fear wearing entitlement. It is the behavior of someone who expects loyalty as currency and panics when the balance drops. The nice guy mask could not survive documentary level documentation. Screenshots do not care about tone. Timelines do not care about charm. Once communications are unsealed, the contrast between public persona and private conduct becomes unavoidable. The smile no longer distracts. The wink no longer disarms. The persona collapses not because people suddenly turned mean, but because the record exists.
It's true. I'm sure you can relate. There's a point where it's like, it's too much, where you always want to be there for your friends, but you can't just constantly trauma dump on them and then put them in the middle and have them side with you on all sides of a battle you're facing alone.
Ryan Reynolds now faces a stack of problems he cannot joke away. Court-driven transparency is the first and most destabilizing. This is not gossip. This is scheduled, time-stamped exposure governed by legal process, filings, orders, public arguments. That kind of transparency strips away improvisation. You cannot spin faster than a docket. Studio skepticism follows naturally. Studios do not emote. They assess. Once a star shifts from asset to variable, unpredictable, meetings change tone. Questions multiply, enthusiasm cools, risk enters the room. The presence of court-driven transparency forces studios to reconsider proximity because proximity now carries consequence.
This guy is genuinely touched in some very strange ways, like a melon baller lobotomy makes more sense than his self-propelled, malignant stupidity and revolting behavior. Yikes. I can imagine there's almost no aspect of this which has been easy for you to navigate, but you've stood up for what's right in a system which more often than not favors what's easy.
Friendship collapse has already played out in real time. Hugh Jackman exiting the blast radius did not happen with drama, but it happened decisively. Silence replaced banter. Distance replaced access. That choice alone sent a message through the industry louder than any statement could. When a long-standing ally steps away quietly, it tells everyone else that the situation is no longer safe to touch casually. Career recalibration is not a punishment. It is a process. Less creative freedom, more oversight, fewer unchecked lanes. That is how the system responds when trust erodes. Marvel, agents, and studios pivoted from protection to distance because protection now looks like exposure. This is not about spite. It is about liability management. What started as private manipulation ended as public exposure. The difference now is that no one has to speculate. The documents exist, the timelines align, the reactions are visible. This is not a rumor cycle that fades when the algorithm moves on. It is a documented collapse unfolding in real time. One filing, one silence, one recalibration at a time. From that point onward, everything around him tightened. Calls got shorter, meetings got quieter. People who once laughed along started choosing careful language. You could feel the shift because Hollywood does not announce exits. It performs them silently. Schedules change. Availability disappears. Access dries up. What made this moment so different was speed. Within days, not months, the tone flipped. The same industry that once protected him began documenting distance. Not publicly, but structurally. Lawyers took the lead. Publicists slowed responses. Executives stopped freelancing reassurance. That is not punishment. That is containment. And the pressure did not come from headlines. It came from paper, court calendars, filing deadlines, ordered disclosures. Those things strip away personality and replace it with facts. Facts do not care how funny you are. They do not care how likable you once seemed. They only care if the record matches the story. Every attempt to regain footing only highlighted the imbalance. Explaining too much made things louder. Joking too fast made things colder. Silence would have helped, but silence requires confidence, and confidence was already gone. When control slips, people talk. When accountability arrives, talking backfires. What we are watching is not a scandal spike. It is a systems response. Studios adjusting risk, agencies protecting exposure, colleagues calculating proximity. These shifts happen before any verdict, before any final ruling, because reputational math always runs ahead of legal math. That is why this phase feels relentless. There is no villain monologue, no dramatic apology, no clean reset, just pressure, accumulation, and visibility. Once private behavior enters public record, the process does not reverse. It only advances step by step with fewer places left to hide. Each day tightens scrutiny, narrows options, drains allies, and turns confidence into calculation, exposure into consequence, momentum into hesitation without relief anywhere.